Hello and welcome to our video on how we interpret sales resumes. We made this video because we wanted to share our point of view on how we read and interpret resumes to shortlist candidates for our sales interview process. There are some frameworks that we use to shortlist sales resumes. These frameworks help bring some objectivity to our sales process. So we felt the need to share it just in case someone finds it appealing and wants to try them out. Every recruiter, whether generalist or specializing in sales, have their own point of view on what to look for in a candidate. We come across a lot of such criteria and preferences on our LinkedIn feed every day. Not just that, we've heard lots of them from our clients and organizations we've interacted and prospected with since our inception. From a company's point of view, every person in the hiring process brings their own ideas on what a good fit candidate in sales should be like. However, these ideas are likely to be divergent unless the company has ensured that all recruiters and hiring managers are on the same page on what to look for in a candidate and, more importantly, how to look for it. In sales, such divergent ideas can lead to hiring of candidates who may not be fit for your sales organization. Also, since sales teams tend to grow faster than other functions, the problem can amplify in no time. The presence of a framework gives some sense of order to the chaos. Through this video, we want to share a few frameworks that have helped us in the past. We do not claim that these will work equally well for your organization, but we do hope you will give it a try and experiment with them if you find them appealing. We will divide the video into two parts. In the first part, we will share with you how we craft job descriptions for sales roles. We will share the example of our JD for the role of account manager for which we recently hired. In the second part, we will open actual resumes of applicants who applied for this role and interpret them section by section. To protect their privacy, we will edit out their personal details. In this section, we will also introduce you to frameworks we use and show examples on how we apply them. Let's start the first part now. You can see the job description of an account manager, which is currently live on our website at the link mentioned in the slide. You can find it on top of the homepage of our website, www.salesdesign.co.in, in the We're Hiring section. Now let's examine this JD. Here's the JD of an account manager, B2B lead generation. We recently hired for this role. In the first two paragraphs, we've tried to explain why our business exists and what our product does. We've articulated the problem we solve for upfront without beating about the bush. We have written this with the intention to sell our business to candidates. Please remember that we are a small organization and not a popular brand name. So quite naturally, we make a pitch for ourselves. Next, we write about why we are inviting applications now. We want to put it out there clearly that the demand for our service is growing, and that is why we are ramping up. The idea is to give a sense of comfort to candidates. Next, we describe in brief what a day in the life of an account manager will look like. We have tried to describe the exact activity that they will do in this role. Notice that we've avoided fancy jargon while describing the activities. We feel that this is necessary so that candidates can imagine themselves doing a role like this. While it is fairly obvious that this is a client servicing role, the set of activities that a specific role requires may not appeal to everyone. So best to spell it out. Lastly, we've mentioned the objective of the role and few requirements, rather preferences, for this role, which are very specific to our company and nature of business. You would have noticed that we have been very brief in our job description and avoided large bullet pointed sections of objectives and requirements, which are very typical of job descriptions you see around on the internet. The idea of crafting the JD in this way is to spark curiosity in the candidate while leaving out details for later conversations. Also, we deliberately avoid a long JD because we design it for short attention span. Now, we'd love to know from you what else could have been included in this JD. Please leave your suggestions in the YouTube comments section. Now let us move to the second part of this video where we will interpret sales resumes. Please remember that these are actual resumes we received for this role. Here's an application from a candidate who is a B2B operations manager. It seems from the designation that he's looking to switch to a sales role. We'll know later. The first section in the resume is about the career objective. The candidate mentions that he wants to work with maximum potential in a challenging and dynamic environment and enhance his professional skills with learning and experience for career growth. Now, this objective is very similar to almost 80% of the resumes we receive, which means that it is fairly hackneyed. Also, this is an objective that neither makes us look favorably nor unfavorably towards a candidate. So we are suggesting something that can possibly move the needle towards favorably. After all, space on a resume is limited. How about replacing the career objective section with why I am applying? As a recruiter, we'd love to hear that story. For example, in your JD, I read about prospects growing tired of cold calling and cold emailing. I've experienced that firsthand in my current role. At the same time, I'm pretty regular on LinkedIn and think that the medium has great potential for generating leads, especially in a B2B environment. I've tried doing that myself with some success, but I never knew that this is a full-fledged business model for companies like yours. I see myself as part of this movement. Well, that was a pathetic attempt, but I'm sure you get the drift. Such narratives help make you and the company part of the same story. In a way, you've already planted a seed in the mind of the recruiter that you are likely to fit in their company. If you have any other ideas on what you can replace career objective with or how you can write it differently, please share in the comment section. The next section in the resume is about the candidate's work experience. While the dominant experience is the city supply operations, the most recent experience is in the same company in another business called Dunzo for Business. Please note that it has been left to the recruiter's understanding on what Dunzo for Business means. Of course, the recruiter can Google it up, but then again, why leave it to chance? Best to describe what it means right there in the resume. It is clear that the candidate is working in a B2B environment, though not necessarily in sales, but it makes sense to highlight B2B or B2C in a sales resume. While it may seem that, how does it matter? Sales is sales. B2B and B2B sales do require very different temperaments. Switching between the two roles can be challenging for candidates. We will elaborate on this distinction a bit more later. The candidate is also mentioned about the impact created in the role. 5x growth. It is a great move to write measurable impact on the resume. At the same time, please be prepared for a deep dive into the numbers. For example, what was the metric? What was the base number? Key initiatives that led to the growth, etc., etc. At this point, let me share the concept of dominant experience with you. The dominant experience of a sales candidate is the job experience that has taken up most of the candidate's career time and is fairly recent. It can be easily spotted on a resume. In the current case, since the candidate has worked in only one company, that becomes a dominant experience for the candidate. We've observed that dominant experience determines the ease or difficulty of reconditioning a candidate in their new job. This dominant experience tends to heavily impact the views and thoughts of the candidate. It is understandable because the candidate has spent a lot of time in this job and it acquires more share of headspace, anecdotes, etc. It is reasonable to assume that the candidate had a pleasant experience in this job and hence stuck around for a long time. We found that candidates love to speak about their dominant experience most. They speak about it with pride. By virtue of spending more time in this job, they have more accomplishments to share. On the contrary, if they have had relatively short stints at another company, they obviously have lesser accomplishments and it takes up less airtime in their conversation. Why is dominant experience important for an interviewer? Deep diving into the dominant experience can reveal more about the candidate than any other experience on their resume. While it seems obvious, we've noticed other interviewers do not give the required time to a dominant experience. Rather, their focus tends to be on either the recent experience or experience from a similar industry, even though they may not be the dominant one. Well, there's nothing wrong in speaking about this. Dominant experience deserves a thorough deep dive. Later in this video, we will analyze more dominant experiences of candidates. For now, let's analyze the previous resume further. Coming back to this resume we were interpreting, you can see that the dominant experience of the candidate is in an operations role. We are of the point of view that experience in an operations role is very useful while applying for a sales role. After all, sales will also have operational aspects to it. Moreover, in this case, the candidate was in a client slash vendor slash partner slash merchant facing role, which is an external facing role. This experience is valuable to us since our role will also be external facing. Having said this, the candidate could have projected this experience in a way that makes it easy for the recruiter to interpret its relevance. For example, if the candidate had mentioned that since this was my first experience in dealing with an external party, I learned the basics of relationship management. Did you notice how the words relationship management have been gently planted to give an idea to the recruiter? If you have more ideas on how to make the description of this role more impactful and relevant for the recruiter, please write it in the YouTube comment section. Next, the candidate has mentioned details about a summer internship. It is not a dominant experience, but must be put out there. Recruiters might be interested in the learnings that the candidate may have gathered during the internship. Having said that, internships, especially the ones done as part of B School curriculum, carry significantly less weightage by recruiters unless they are done from a large reputed firm. Also, after a few years of work experience, the internships diminish in significance. Not a lot of recruiters will tell you this. The other observation we had here was the amount of space utilized to write about the internship. So much more could have been written about the dominant experience by utilizing less space for the description of the internship. The next section is about educational qualifications and achievements. To us, educational experience or achievements in grad or postgrad was not a criteria for shortlisting. However, we do need to call out a few stereotypes here. An MBA means that the candidate will expect higher compensation than a graduate with similar experience. An MBA is considered a more stable choice since there are low chances of attrition. The likelihood of doing another MBA is very low. Like I said, these are stereotypes and don't always hold true in every situation. However, candidates should not be caught surprised when they notice these stereotypes playing out in front of them in real life. These stereotypes exist, but very few people call it out openly. Lastly, there is a section in the resume called About Me. We loved reading this section, and it's good that the candidate is trying to sell himself. Having said that, the section could have been made more real by adding a section called Skills I'd Like to Develop on the job. For example, from my future employers, I expect to learn how to design sales compensation and rewards. Or, from my future employers, I want to be mentored by someone who can help me understand sales hiring. What are some other ways you can keep it real on resumes? On that note, what else could have been included in this resume? Please write in the YouTube comment section. Now, before we go on to interpreting a few more resumes, I'd like to take a pause and share another framework with you. This framework is called spectrums. You will notice that I have introduced 6 spectrums on this slide. These spectrums are: number 1, sales cycle time spectrum, with short sales cycle time on one end and long sales cycle time on the other. Number 2, touch level spectrum, with inside sales being on one end and field sales being on the other. Number 3, customer type spectrum, with enterprise being on one end and consumer on the other. Number 4, the route spectrum, direct sales on one end and channel sales on the other. Number 5, product type spectrum, pure product on one end and pure service on the other. Number 6, brand spectrum, celebrity brand on one end and underdog brand on the other. If you look around, you will find these terms like inside sales, field sales, direct sales, channel sales, enterprise sales, consumer sales, etc. are common parlance when salespeople talk across industries. All we have done is organize these into spectrums. These spectrums help us identify two things. Number 1, where does our role lie on each of these spectrums? And number 2, where does our candidate's dominant profile or experience lie on each of these spectrums? For example, our role is an enterprise sales role. When we see that a candidate has dominant experience in consumer sales, we know the possible challenges it poses for the candidate as well as for us. We do take a decision based on specifics in the resume, but irrespective of that, it makes us aware that this could be challenging. If the candidate is shortlisted, We know that this will be one of the conversation points in future interviews. For example, we could ask the candidate, how different do you think your previous role will be to the role you are applying for? Are there any adjustments that you think you will have to make? Also, the candidate could end up asking us, what kind of training will you provide me to adjust to enterprise sales, knowing that I have majorly consumer sales experience? Similarly, we could ask a candidate whose dominant sales experience has been in a celebrity brand that it was easy for you to book appointments because you were working for such a large brand. We are a startup and people don't know us. How will you book appointments in such a situation? Do you get the drift? One last thing. These spectrums are based on the premise that within sales, moving from one end of the spectrum to another is challenging. Anyone who does not believe that is unlikely to find this framework appealing. Now, using this framework of dominant experience, we decided to shortlist the candidate for further conversations. However, based on the spectrums, we felt that there were some challenges and we needed to address them in the interviews. For example, we are an inside sales organization, while the candidate seems to be accustomed to a field sales role. The candidate is accustomed to small merchants as clients, while our role is targeted towards medium and large enterprises. The candidate is accustomed to short to medium cycle sales, while our sales cycle is medium to long. So we prepared questions around these and decided to have a telephonic conversation with the candidate. Now, let us look at resumes of two more candidates who applied for this role. We will not analyze the complete resume, but only the dominant experience. We will map out the dominant experience on the spectrums and show you a comparison. Please take some time to go through this dominant experience of this profile. You will notice that in most cases, the spectrum matches with our role. Few things we need to check on later are, number one, it can't be said beyond doubt that the candidate has managed large enterprise accounts. Most of the experience is in medium-sized enterprises. However, we can't be sure, so we decided to make this a conversation point. Number two, the candidate has worked for a celebrity brand with a solid product. In our case, it's a pure service and we're not famous either. This could pose some challenges while adjusting to the new role. Again, we decided to make this a conversation point in the interview. Please take some time to go through this dominant experience in the profile. The candidate seems to have managed large enterprise accounts. This is definitely appealing for us. The candidate has worked in relatively long sales cycle. Our sales cycle is definitely shorter than IT sales, so we don't see much difficulty in the candidate adjusting to a relatively shorter cycle. We have to find out from the candidate whether his current role is in an inside sales role, as it is not clear from this resume. So we decided to prepare questions based on this. That's all for this video. In future videos, we will share more points of view about sales hiring. Please subscribe to our channel if you'd like to stay updated on our future videos. Also, if you like, please share the video on LinkedIn. Thank you for watching.